Hi, I'm Jessie.
And I'm Natasha.
And together, we host Not Creative, the podcast that flips the script on creativity, bringing together the ones with the ideas and the ones who make it all happen behind the scenes.
In each episode, we dive into the minds of creatives, problem solvers, and the people who prove you don't have to wear the creative label to shape brilliant ideas.
Let's get into it.
Hi, Nat. This is fun.
I know. Yes, we've just wrapped up season 1.
I know. I didn't think we'd get here. I don't know why I thought we wouldn't, but we did.
Well, I guess it's just the two of us today, so shall we get this started?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Welcome to Not Creative, the podcast that flips the script on creativity, speaking to those behind the ideas and those making it happen. We are very excited to be here on our season 1 wrap-up. It's just the two of us today, so I'm sorry.
There's no talent. There's no talent coming in.
No talent. But it's been a really fun season. It was our first. I feel like we've learned a lot, and we spoke to so many interesting people across all spectrums of creativity and different fields. So
do you know what's really funny is when we started this, I did not think we were going to learn things. I did not think that we were in an educational space. I was like, this is the space where people can come, have a rant, have a moan, spill some tea, and I came away learning things, and it's great. It's great to learn things.
The really funny thing for me is one of the things that surprised me the most is how much hate we got because of the name of our podcast. And people had very strong opinions across the whole spectrum. Creatives, not creatives, creatives adjacent. Everyone we spoke about, oh yeah, we are doing a podcast. It's called Not Creative. People be like, ooh, but they're not creatives. And yeah, that was a really funny one for me. I was not expecting such a strong reaction.
I loved the controversy. I agree. I was not expecting people to feel so strongly about it or against it. And it made me feel more defensive. Like, we've chosen the correct name here. Like, we've done this right. I think one of the things that surprised me actually about that not creative label is I expected people to have more definitive boundaries between creative and not creative. And I maybe that's because of the industry we're in, where we see a creative department. There is a four-sided, box that they fit in. And it was very rare that people said anything of that. Almost everybody said everyone can be creative. I think all roles are creative. Humans are creative. People are creative. Anyone in the business is creative. There were a couple exceptions that said not everyone can be creative, but I expected that to be the norm. I expected people to say, well, obviously I'm creative and you're not. And that didn't really happen.
But do you think people are being genuine? Do you think that this happened because people are being genuine? Or do you think it was like, well, it's bad PR if I say, no, I'm sorry, you're not creative, I am. And maybe that's why they were holding back.
That is really funny. That is a great question. I would love to revisit all of our guests and kind of look them in the eyes and go, are you telling the truth?
I will say in the spirit of who is creative and who isn't, I loved how we would start almost every episode by asking people about what is creativity to them, and some of the responses I really enjoyed. Like when I think it was Nick who said that creativity is imagination. I love that. One of the favorites, I feel like a crowd favorite, was creativity is problem solving. Yes. That is a very politically correct answer, I must say. I love the answer, but it's still very politically correct.
Yes.
Yes. But Harry's maybe had one of my favorites, which was how creativity is deviating from the norm.
Mm-hmm.
That was a nice one.
It was. I felt like the problem solving angle, it came up a couple times in our conversations, and it wasn't a view I had before. It wasn't a lens through which I had looked at creativity. And
really?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of it in that way. My default standing of creativity is makers of things, makers of words, of pictures, of motion, of code, of whatever it is, of artistry in some form. And of course it's problem solving. You can have creative problem solving. And I just hadn't considered it. And I was really grateful that so many people were bringing that to the table, because I do have a very maybe pigeonholed view of creativity of, well, you don't magic things from nothing. So, but of course that is problem solving. I magic things from nothing every day of my life.
Look at you, Jess. You learned something. You're growing as a human being.
Oh, well, that's not the intention of this.
It's like, dang.
I was happy as I was. No growth.
It's so interesting that you're saying that you haven't thought about creativity as problem solving, because you problem solve every day.
I know.
But I think it goes back to what we're saying about how we work in an industry that have departments and job titles and roles that are called creative. So it's exclusive by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I find that it was a funny thing, this whole kumbaya, everyone is creative view. And even more interesting, I'm going to say even more interesting to me was how when we were talking about creativity and do you have it, don't you have it, is it a gift, is it a curse? It felt that the majority of people would say that it's a thing that you can exercise and is a muscle and you practice it and it's not like some magical juju. But on the other hand, we heard the stories of the creatives that came into the podcast, and they all had things coming up since they were kids. I feel like almost all of them had been inclined, like Tina, the Yadza twins, maybe even Kat, like Jimmy. Jimmy was talking about how when he was growing up and he knew how to draw. And yeah, I found that is a funny, how do I say, like, not comparison, but a dichotomy, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
How it's this whole everyone is creative, it's a muscle. I must say though, I do remember the Yaza twins saying that they feel like it's something we're born with.
Yes. I thought their perspective was very interesting, because obviously they have been fueling each other's creativity since, well, birth. And that sense of encouraging competition, problem solving through friction and different points of view. And they actually brought a lot. I think we need to interview more twins and more pairs, because the people who know each other really well, and they didn't cut each other off, and they didn't, speak over each other, but they were able to enhance with a difference what the other person said. I found that a very refreshing conversation. But their childhood obviously was very creative, but they took a divergent path and then came back together. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was gonna say exactly that. One of the highlights for me was how they were talking about how one of them actually chose the creative path in university, studying arts, if I'm not mistaken, and the other one actually went to engineering, but
Yeah.
which is considered a more a safer, a traditional, I'm doing air quotes, job, but she couldn't find jobs, and how actually design and creative ended up being the safe choice.
Yeah.
That was a big aha moment for me, because you don't think about that. I don't think I ever heard anyone saying that a career in the creative field is actually the safe option.
Yeah. Well, and I remember both Tina and Jimmy brought up the safety of career choices. Like Tina was talking about what to study and how to, go into, university, and then how to get a job after university, and how that plagues everybody. We're all thinking, do I study the thing I love, or do I do the thing that's going to get me a job if they're not the same? And I remember Jimmy was talking about wanting to be a fashion designer, and then, that transition to, oh, graphic design is the one that's employable. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll go down that route.
Yeah, this was a quite a surprising take. I
Yeah.
I grew up in a household with parents who studied economics and engineering.
Mhm.
And my older brother studied economics. My younger brother studied engineering. And then when I went to study communications and advertising, everyone was like, ooh, oof, I wonder how that's gonna pan out. Ooh, don't know, not so sure. So
Well, I think
yeah.
even that lens of like how you see yourself, because you started your career as a copywriter. And I remember that coming out when we were talking to Carrie. Carrie was saying, oh, that revelation that somebody looking at her samples of writing for her PR job were saying, oh, you're a writer. And she was like, oh, am I? Like I hadn't thought of myself in that way. And you think, yeah, oh, okay, I'm allowed to be that. Someone else saw that, so I'm allowed to be that.
Yeah. But Jess, how come you don't think you are a creative person? And I'm not talking work now because I know we are both proud, not creatives, even
Mhm,
though
mhm.
this title might ruffle feathers in others. But with your craft, with your side hustle,
Yeah.
your hobby, it was interesting to me to hear now that you don't consider yourself a creative person.
I mean, I guess ultimately I know that I can make things. I grew up with that kind of thing being normal, where you could be an accountant or work in finance like my parents did, also very practical people, but they would do, creative bits for the holidays or for us kids or for a family event. And it was just so interwoven. I don't inherently think of them as being creative, but of course they're creative. Of course that's true. And maybe they're going to be insulted. I don't know. Do they watch this? Hi, Mom. I don't know.
Hi, Jess's mom. So if you would be in the hot seat now, and if you had to answer the question
Hmm.
about creativity, and I'm twisting the question because why not, right? We can
Sure.
make the rules we want. And the question was, is creativity something you are born with? Is everyone creative, or is creativity a talent?
Mm.
In which camp do you sit? Because I feel like this was something that we saw on the podcast, and the majority was on the politically correct, everyone is creative camp,
Mhm.
with a few exceptions on creativity is a talent. Where do you see yourself?
That is a great question. I would say in the nature versus nurture aspect of creativity, I think I come down on the nurtured side. That there's probably a tiny kernel of creativity in everybody, but if it's not nurtured, if you don't see an outlet for it, if it could be music, it could be art, it could be cooking, it could be dance, it could be something. If you don't have it encouraged and find your outlet early, I think it doesn't exist, is what I would say.
Interesting.
What would you say? How would you define
Oh,
it?
I was really hoping you would not ask that.
Oh, come on.
I'm like, I managed to ask her the question, so I'm out of the hook. I find that people are born with a curiosity,
Mm,
and that curiosity can lead them to different places, and it can lead them to more artistic expressions that are most commonly related to creativity, or it can lead them to explore other things. I'll give an example now with my son because he's 5 and he's in a really fun moment, but he is obsessed about animals. He loves animals. His favorite thing now, when he sits down at the end of the day to watch some TV, a little bit of TV, he doesn't want to watch just cartoons anymore. He asked me to put facts about animals for him to watch because he wants to learn about animals all the time. And all the books he brings from school are books about animals. And he's just obsessed and he loves it. And I find that fascinating because if you think about, there are kids that at his age, they might be really interested in sports. And it's not that he doesn't play sports, but some kids might be like, I just want to play football all day long, or I just want to draw all day long, or I just want to dance all day long. And it's that curiosity. And I feel that where a curiosity leads us, and it's something very personal, that will determine how creativity is going to flourish in you or not. Right? I would say, like, I feel like when I was a kid, I would consider myself a creative kid.
mhm,
I liked drawing. I liked dancing. I always liked the creative outlets. I did start my career and I ended up going to a creative field. But funnily enough, after experiencing it, as you said, I started my career as a copywriter. After experiencing it, I decided that I didn't want that. I decided that wasn't for me. And it was also very, very enlightening for me hearing from a lot of the people that we talked about on the pressures of creativity and I feel like it's when creativity is commercial, like every creativity is commercial. If you're doing it for work, if it's not a hobby, you have pressure to deliver, you have pressure to perform. And it came up in so many of our conversations. I loved Anna Lu saying, it was like, babe, if you're stuck, you're stuck. You can have the best Pinterest board in the world. If you're stuck, you're stuck. And I love that. And pressure is so difficult for creativity to flourish and for creativity to have space. I feel like that's why I am proud to be on the not creative spectrum, because it's a choice that I made to be around creativity, but not have the pressure to be the one, carrying the mantle of the creative in the conversation. And yeah, I find it very liberating. It's not to say I don't have pressures, of course not. And I'm sure you will agree with me, Jess, but it's just liberating not to have to deliver and perform every single time. You know what I mean?
I do. I do. I mean, I think that was one of the things I would say I learned was the way pressure manifests, because so many people talked about communication, collaboration, good and bad collaboration. How do you deal with points of friction? How do you deal with points of conflict, whether it's client conflict, internal conflict, hierarchical conflict coming from different parts of your existing organization? Everyone manifests that pressure. We are all under pressure in our jobs. And how you work through it to still create the thing is really interesting. I mean, Harry talked about it with truth in marketing a lot. Obviously, that's something very close to his heart, but how you dilute that truth, because you want to be pleasing everybody. You don't want to have the difficult conversation. You don't want to alienate anyone, whether it's an audience or an internal person, and therefore it all falls apart. And everyone had a version of that kind of conflict resolution story. And I think it does speak to the pressures we're under. I have a lot of difficult conversations in my life. I'm assuming you do too. And I think as a non-creative, it's often my job to be the person navigating difficult conversations. And so I was genuinely picking up tips from people who said, I make sure I frame it in this way, or I make sure we start the conversation by identifying this, or I make sure this person is in the room. I make sure this person is out of the room. And so, yeah, I learned some really good conflict resolution, especially around getting to a creative result. I thought that was
Yeah.
really helpful.
I feel for me, Carrie and Nick really stood out on that because Carrie was talking about how silos were so damaging. And we all know that. This was something I was reflecting after. We all know that collaboration is important. We all know that silos are bad. But why do we keep having them? Why do we keep doing that? And why not just us, but like organizations in general, agencies, studios, companies? Why are we so bad at collaborating when everyone identifies and understands that collaboration is really important? And what Carrie had this mantra, didn't she? I don't remember exactly how it was, but something about like creative work needs to work hard to answer the brief. And I remember her saying that the best experiences she had and the best work comes out of collaboration, to exactly to your point, Jess. And the thing that stood out for me from Nick, and I must say, I laughed so much, not just recording Nick's episode, but editing Nick's episode. Oh my God, I was laughing so hard. But it was fascinating to hear that even in a completely different industry that is still grounded in creativity, which is television, the same patterns appear. Collaboration is still so important, and being able to evolve, and exactly what you said, bringing people along on the journey and understanding how to navigate them, because at the end of the day, it's a team sport. You're not doing this alone, and if you don't have your team with you, you're not going to go anywhere. Yeah, can we talk about the DAX now, because it was hilarious.
I felt very, very seen, even though he was accusing me of something. He didn't know he was accusing me of something. I don't think I've presented the same since his conversation where he was saying things like, and then they're quoting me back to me. And I'm like, I did say that. I said that recently. Yes, you wrote it down. Well done.
I think it was one of the biggest highlights for me from the whole
Oh,
season was
so
his
funny.
whole bashing of Dax, and he's talking about, and I'm sitting in these meetings and they're talking about, and the first half of the meeting is all about the meeting that we had before. And I was there. I remember it. So why are you telling me again? And then we go on for an hour. Oh my God, honestly, I'm with you. I feel that this is a big learning. Like I have not presented the same since that conversation. And I'm so conscious now when I am presenting that I'm saying it. I'm like, I'm sorry. I am going to read this for you now. I
Yeah.
know it's tedious, but it's just because there's a lot of words on the screen and I wrote this so that I can send you after and you can read it alone. But now that we're here in the meeting, I feel like compelled to read it to you. And I always think about Nick
Oh
while
my
I'm
gosh.
doing this.
It really did change. It really did change the way I present content, especially in that case making. I think agencies, we just have a reputation of maybe reputation is the wrong word, maybe a tradition, a history, a legacy of recap the thing, remind them of what we're trying to do, remind them of the thing they agreed to. To be fair, we're often met with net new feedback or conflicting feedback later in the process. So we have to say, remember that time you said you wanted this thing so that you don't unsay it later.
That's what I was going to say. In our defense, maybe Nick is amazing and maybe Nick does not give conflicting feedback. And maybe when it see it blue and he asked for it to be blue, he was like, oh yeah, great. I've asked for it to be blue and now it's blue. But I feel like we've been burned so many times where clients said, I want this blue. And then we show them blue and they're like, why is it blue? I wanted it green. And that's why, Nick, we have to say, you said this. So we are presenting that. And I'm sorry if that's not a fun experience to sit on those meetings, but we've been burned.
That was such a funny conversation. And I mean, speaking of learnings, we all need to get back together for the Burn It to the Ground episode. I mean,
Yes.
that came out in one of our earliest conversations with Costanza, and that sense of we all have more secrets we want to tell. That was a universal truth.
Yeah, that is true. Another thing that stood out for me on hers is something that actually came up on a few others, but was talking about managing creativity.
Mm.
Yeah, because Costanza was really talking about the practice, right? She was talking about how it's a muscle that you have to exercise and you need to keep practicing to be better at it. And Doug was talking about managing different skill sets within a creative environment. That for me was fascinating, especially now at the beginning of my journey running my studio and hearing from people that are more seasoned, also hearing from Kat and learning about how to manage different skill sets within creativity that aren't necessarily your specialty. So Doug is a writer, but then he was a creative director and he was suddenly having to manage designers and devs. It's not, I don't think it's a challenge that people often think about. I think when you're starting in this journey, in this creative career or not creative career, creative adjacent career, I don't necessarily think about how to manage people to actually deliver their best. And I feel like we've talked about this a lot in different contexts as well on the differences between being a really good doer and being a really good manager and how they are different things. But the traditional evolution of work is that if you're really good at doing something, people will put you to manage others that are doing the thing or that are doing some similar things.
Yeah, and actually, I just wrote down Honolulu because I remember she did a similar, the switch from being in an agency to working in house. That sense
Yeah.
of I've gone from being good at shaping the creativity inside the organization to now I'm evaluating it on the outside. Now I'm bringing that production sense of what it means to be a good client. Does it mean to be a good client for a big corporate company that has a lot of work streams going. And that pivot that you make from, as you say, managing creativity in one skill set, one discipline, and having to translate it, I thought that was also, something that she talked about being a challenge, but an exciting one. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Oh, I'm going to shift completely in a very non-smooth segue, but
Good.
one thing that was, we talked a lot with Jimmy,
Mm-hmm.
but I did feel that came across on other places, which I think is also very important to touch on, is the mental health element
Oh,
on
yeah. Uh-huh.
creativity. Yes, we talked about the pressures that people have to deliver, but the burnouts and how that affects
Mhm.
people and the imposter syndrome that comes with it. And I was reflecting after our conversations about how deeply personal it can be sometimes and how challenging it is, right? Because it is a job, it is commercial. You're creating work against a brief. You are being judged or evaluated by a client, by a manager, by a creative director, by other people in the business, by account people. And it can be very tough to separate the
Yeah.
personal and the professional on work. And I feel that that's why when some of the people were talking about giving space for creativity and the pressure to perform is because of the other side, because of the burnout, because of the challenges that can have from a mental health perspective on them. And it's hard, isn't it?
It is. And I think you're right. It was more explicitly talked about in his. I mean, I think that was at the heart of what Analu was saying. When you're stuck, you're stuck. But even when Kat was talking about what are the spaces to create good creative, what are the things that we need to do as a team? And then what do we need to do for individuals? What do we need to do physically in the space? And then that psychological safety of how do you create psychological safety in evaluating work? I I would struggle to have things I've written, drawn, created, critiqued on a regular basis. And I think maybe that's a sense of I know how much time and energy I put into it. And it's because I'm not doing it for a living that I don't create stuff that often, but I think about presentations I'm doing or work I'm putting into a new business pitch or proposal. And then if somebody comes in and is highly critical of it, even now with my hardened steel soul that I have, where I think I'm immune to these things, I can get very wounded by an offhand, oh, I don't think that's really right for this. How dare you?
Yeah, you need to have tough skin. It's not something that I was very empathetic to before,
hmm
but I feel like a lot of the conversations we've had really changed my perspective about that because to your point, you are constantly being critiqued. You're constantly in the spotlight and it's not for the faint heart. It's really not. It's a tough, tough, tough place to be, to put yourself out there all the time. And funnily enough, it brings us back to the beginning, what we are talking about on what is creativity and to be creative. And I feel that to pursue a career in creativity, you need to really love it. You need to really love it because otherwise it's really hard. It's not for everyone.
Well, speaking of things you really love, how's this for a segue? What about things we really hate? I mean, people loved the Room 101 concept. I didn't know if it was going to land, but people love to hate things.
People love to hate things. I was certain it was going to land.
I mean, I just want to get straight to it. What do you hate? What's in your
Uh,
Room 101?
I had some time to think about this, and then I realized I didn't have to think very, very deeply because it was very clear and obvious in my mind. Peaches. I hate peaches, and I don't mean that I don't hate new biz. I actually enjoy new biz of thinking about a problem, of solving it, of presenting it in a way that I feel makes sense and putting it in front of the client and having the client be like, yes, this is great. I love that. Even if the client says, no, this is shit, I still love the whole back and forth. I hate the idea of peaches that is the throw spaghetti on the wall and see if it sticks.
Yes.
because that's so counterintuitive, that's so counterproductive. It wastes everyone's time, and it's impossible that you're ever going to be able to do a good job if
Mhm.
you are creating something in isolation. We've talked about this already here. It came up so many times that the best creative work comes from collaboration. So, how on earth do clients believe that if they send a brief and they ask agencies to compete against each other by creating work completely in isolation, what are you judging? Are you judging people's abilities to do what exactly? To come together in a room and like to see how much time they can invest without having any idea if any of that is gonna land? That's just stupid. Sorry.
It is. The odds of you getting something right in a free creative pitch where you're giving away work and ideas for free. The whole point is that you have to be closer to the client, closer to the brief. It's why onboarding and input is so mission critical to every single project we do. It's wild that you are expected to demonstrate that kind of effort. Pitches is a very worthy entry in Room 101.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
How about you?
People who call themselves storytellers. Just stop it. Just stop it. I hate it. I sell storytelling for a living. I use the word storytelling as a practice. Brands need better storytelling. I think it's true. I think there is a place for the word storytelling, but calling yourself a storyteller, well, I'm a storyteller. Blech, it makes me feel icky. Just stop it.
Well, for anyone listening or watching, next time you meet Jessie, introduce herself by saying, "Hi, I'm a storyteller."
Oh God. It's like a thing I see more and more on people's like LinkedIn profiles where or I have heard people say it out loud. I think that's the one that gets the most ick from me. Um
That is hilarious. I'm gonna start paying attention now. Whenever I meet someone, I'm gonna start paying attention.
there are some fields that I think are more prone to doing it than others. But yeah, to be clear, I'm not
Probably.
against storytelling. It's when you call yourself a storyteller. Can't go.
What was your favorite Romano one from our episodes?
I mean, I liked all of them. I
Oh,
like
come on, Jessie.
I
Don't be so
know.
politically correct.
Okay, we'll be politically correct. I mean, Nick's slamming marketing decks was the funniest because I make marketing decks for a living. So that resonated very deeply. And then both Harry and Jimmy talking about awards was very funny because I share a dislike of awards, and I thought they both were very passionately against awards, which I liked. What was different? They had slightly different takes on it though, because Jimmy's was about award culture, about like the brief being this needs to be an award-winning campaign. This needs to be award-winning creative. And that sense of we're not here to do the right thing, we're here to win an award. And
Yeah.
I completely understood that. Harry's was slightly different in that it was like you're only ever going to be able to select the best campaign, rabbit ears for those listening, the best campaign or the best whatever it is out of the category of people who have entered. So it's the
Yeah.
best out of those things. And
And who
his,
defines what is the best also, right? Who defines
yeah,
what is the best is the people that are there. And yeah.
yeah, it was almost like a philosophical debate about can you have someone who goes out and harvests campaigns, harvests creativity, and then decides what the best is.
Yeah.
What about you?
I liked when the Yaza twins were talking about AI automated emails. I thought it was
That's
hilarious because
funny.
they're so annoying.
Yeah.
And they had a really interesting perspective on AI, I felt, because it was a mixture of possibility but fear, right? There was a possibility of this is an amazing tool and how can it enhance creativity, but also the fear of is it coming for our jobs? But the specifically about the gazillion of sales emails that are inundating our inboxes now and are just so annoying. So yeah, I really like that one.
Yeah. I liked the passion that people brought to the question. It
True.
was met with enthusiasm, and that was fun.
True. And another, not Room on the One related, but another thing that stood out to me was the importance of gender balance in the industry. We actually had quite a balanced amount of guests, which I feel like it's great because we can get some very different perspectives into the table. But it did come out a couple of times. Kat was a big advocate on it, wasn't she? And she was talking about even going to practical measures in her own studio on transparent salary bands and so on to do her part on bridging the gap for gender equality in the industry. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point, actually, that it is a conversation we should all be more comfortable having. After all of our conversations, who would you say is your favorite not creative, and has it changed in your mind? I'm regularly thinking, how would I answer this question? And I have had a couple different viewpoints over the season as people have said different things or made me think about a different role. Who's your favorite not creative?
so when we started this whole thing, I didn't have a individual in my mind, but I had a function. And I looked at project managers as a whole as my favorite not creatives because a project manager can make or break your project. So I had the project managers in mind. But because the so many of our guests actually named people or thought about individuals, I haven't thought about it before,
Mm-hmm.
but it was obvious. It was obvious. And it's going to be obvious for you as well. Claire Grantham.
Aw, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It became obvious in my mind because we worked so well together
Mhm.
and we stayed friends. And I tell her all the time that my work dream is for one day to hire her because she's amazing at her job. So yeah,
Oh, that's
Claire
a
Grantham.
great answer. Yes, Claire. I love that. I love
Thank you.
that. That's a great tribute to the not creative. Also very creative. Like she's probably
Oh
gonna
my
give
God.
for the label. Like,
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Because yeah, Claire is the project manager who is sewing her own clothes
mhm.
and creating cards and doing all of the things. So
Yeah,
very creative, not creative person.
exactly. Exactly.
How about you? I'm curious on about your journey that you said that you were changing and navigating.
I have it's made me think of, more people in like business roles or functions as we've gone through it. But I am going to say the person that I always come back to as my absolute favorite, not creative, Chris Voss. I am obsessed with Chris Voss, and the world needs to know Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, is a book about negotiation. He's the former head of the FBI's negotiation team, and he now works in the private sector. There are so many things that you can do to influence an outcome. And I use his advice and his technique in creative scenarios, in my personal life. His advice has changed the way I work. And so he is my absolute favorite, not creative. I don't know you, Chris, but if you're listening, I am a super fan and I would love to meet you one day.
And I can attest because Jessie makes everyone read your book.
I make everyone read your book. That is my favorite, not creative, although I feel shamed that you said Claire.
You are a Chris Voss fangirl. We all know it.
This could be my opportunity to meet him. So I'm going on tape to say.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Um, also,
Wow, Jess, can you believe it? A full season.
a full season. Isn't that wild?
It's wild. The most wild thing is how people actually wanted to talk to us.
Next season, we have a great lineup of people. We are going to talk to people from all different industries. And honestly, I cannot wait. This is going to be great.
It's going to be great. I am feeling very excited about it because season 1 was the beginning of all of this. We were trying some things. We had a lot of fun and we talked to so many interesting people. But now we can get all of those learnings and really amp it up for season 2.
I can't wait. It's been such a blast. And I think we make really good co-hosts.
I know. Look at us.
I mean, it's about time we just chatted ourselves because I try really hard to not talk over our guests because they're giving up their time and energy and they all have very clever things to say, but we're very chatty. I think it's about time we had an episode just us.
That is true. And even just us, we were struggling not to talk over each other. So there you go.
No, we're not very polite.
No. Well, this was fun.
Great.
And I'll see everyone on season 2.
See you for season 2. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Not Creative.
If you like this episode, follow us for more and spread the word.
You can find us on all the streaming platforms, Instagram, and YouTube at Not Creative Podcast.
Catch you next time.
I mean, that was pretty freaking good, man.